Connect, the bond runs as deep and endless as the sea.
She was young and in love. She was getting the attention she always craved.
From the start, they were inseparable. It was them against the world. They were locked into each other's lives.
But add a third in the mix, and the tides can quickly turn.
It was a love triangle that turned deadly.
Blind loyalty can drag you under, drowning reason in its wake.
She refuses to turn on him, standing by him no matter what.
In the end, all that's left is wreckage, with lives forever broken.
The officer found a decomposed body in the trunk. It was horrific. I just blacked out. I don't know what happened.
He thought he was rekindling an old flame, but he was walking right into a trap.
There's truly nothing that she wouldn't do for him. If he asked, she did it, no matter the cost.
July 19th, 2014. Panama City, Florida, is a popular beach destination renowned for its stunning white sand beaches, sunny weather, and lively nightlife.
Our beaches are some of the most beautiful in the world. We have families coming in from everywhere, spring break, we have colleges coming down. Everyone comes down to enjoy that atmosphere on the beach, just that get away from everything, lose your worries, lose your cares, and have a good time.
Panama City is the largest city between Tallahassee and Pensacola, known for its lower crime rate compared to its neighbors.
It's that perfect merge between small town atmosphere and everyone knowing everyone and big town, so you have pretty much access to any extracurricular you'd like to do.
But on July 24th, that sense of security is shaken when Panama City police receive a disturbing report. Tangela Peterson walks into the sheriff's office to report that her son, Tavish Green, has been missing since July 19th.
Tangela says that her son went out Saturday night. She spoke to him Saturday morning, and that was the last time she heard from him.
Miss Peterson, his mother, had reason to believe that something else may have happened. She normally heard from him pretty regularly, and when he stopped contacting her, she reached out to the county, to the sheriff's office, to have him listed as missing.
I feel like something wrong with my baby. I just feel like something bad has happened, and he has not checked in.
Tangela tells authorities that her fears stem from an incident 2 months prior when her son witnessed the murder of his cousin, Jayshon Smith, and Tavish is set to testify.
They were going to go to court in August, and my son was the star witness for the prosecutors. They, told him just to lay low, don't go anywhere, don't do anything.
I know Tavish's fear was that there could be retribution because he couldn't get the heat off of him from it.
Tangela informs the deputy that her son received death threats before he went missing, and she thinks those threats may have led to his strange disappearance.
Everybody was trying to make me feel like my child should have been the one who got shot as well, and it was very negative coming toward my child, as though he was the reason that this happened.
24-year-old Tavish Green, affectionately known as T-Mac among friends and family, was adored by nearly everyone in his hometown of Panama City, but no one cherished him as much as his mother.
All my boys are mama's boys, but he was really a mama's boy.
In middle school, Tavish was a standout athlete.
He played basketball for Rosenwald when he was in middle school, but he was a pretty boy. All he cared about was cheerleaders and the girls.
And the girls liked Tavish's looks and keen sense of style.
He always wanted everything matching, his shoes, his shirts, his hat. He loved hats.
By high school, Tavish's attention was directed more towards the ladies than on schoolwork, and he eventually dropped out. But his mother set him straight.
What I really appreciated, he asked me, he said, "Mama, what is it that you want me to do?" I said, "I want you to graduate. I want you to get your diploma." He did it. He graduated, got his driver's license, then he got a job. He just was so excited about life. He was a saint, but he was a good kid. But again, he was still out there in the streets.
Planned to go clubbing at a local spot called Big Daddy's Nightclub later in the evening.
He said, and when you come home, call me and I'm gonna shoot through there. I said, okay. So I hung up the phone with him. That Saturday night, he texted me and he said, Mom, what you doing? You cook? I said, no, I didn't cook. I said, but I'm home. He said, okay. And that's the last time I spoke or texted my child.
Tangela tells detectives that Tavish usually calls in the morning to check in, but Tavish never called.
That Sunday night, I kind of started getting a little worried. And then I went to calling everybody, and I'm just like, now I ain't heard from T-Mac. I need to know where he is. We got no answers, and all that night, I just kept getting up and just like, God wouldn't let me sleep. I got an unusual feeling. Something just not right.
Since Tavish has been missing for nearly 4 days, detectives put out an APB for his Chevy Malibu. 24 hours later, they get a hit.
Police patrolling the area spot a sedan that matches the description of Tavish's car. It has the same plates too. It's near a rough part of town, and strangely enough, it's right next to a station where police vehicles fill up with gas.
When the officer approaches the vehicle, everything appears to be in order. However, he notices a rancid smell coming from the car's trunk.
Because Tavish was reported missing, the officer had the right to examine the vehicle. Because there was a belief that Tavish could be in danger. So he enters the vehicle, pops the trunk, and what the officer sees, he'll never forget. It's a decomposed body of a deceased male. The body was almost unidentifiable, and that's how decomposed it was.
Once they verified that they did have a body that had been found in a trunk, they contacted investigations. Once we started closing off the scene to everything, our sergeant at the time placed me in charge of that homicide, and at that point, I kind of started having to delegate out from there what I need people to do for me.
Detectives know this isn't going to be a fast investigation. At the moment, they can't confirm the identity of the victim in the trunk or the cause of death.
Unfortunately, the body was in such a state that there was no immediate cause of death even to be able to be determined. We weren't able to start determining that until we were able to clean up the trunk quite a bit.
If the body in the trunk is Tavish's, who wanted him dead? And did it have something to do with him testifying in his cousin's upcoming trial?
Police don't have an easy task on their hands. If the body is Tavish's, there will be a ton of leads that they will have to run down. And if the body isn't his, then it begs the questions, whose body is it and where is Tavish?
People were terrified, and it was headline news.
Crime scene investigators begin processing the scene.
They began processing the vehicle meticulously for fingerprints, touch DNA, any other evidence that may be part of it, while the medical examiner starts preparing the body. They'll photograph it, then they'll start removing the clothing, and they'll start looking for any obvious signs of injury. And in this case, they begin to find bullet wounds to the body.
The medical examiner is able to confirm that Tavish was shot twice.
What we identified was the wounds were from his upper thigh and then up the body. Generally, that would have been someone firing from about waist level at him.
But little other evidence is found.
The vehicle itself had been pretty meticulously cleaned prior to it being left in the position it was in.
Detectives have a murder mystery on their hands. To find answers, police will need to speak to Tangela about who might have wanted her son dead. Unbeknownst to them, Tangela is already on her way to the crime scene.
My niece called me with a panic in her voice, and she said, T-Mac, T-Mac, they found T-Mac. I made a U-turn in the street. I couldn't get through the car, so I went up on the curb and I went through the light. I was driving so reckless.
Tangela is hysterical and approaches the crime scene where her son's car was found.
Panama City police officer was standing there. As I'm running through, they stopped me And I just said, please let me go. I just need to see that my baby. Everything in me knew that that was him. And I just felt like my whole world was crumbling down.
Detectives prepared to break the horrific news to Tangela.
I said, I need you to tell me, is that my son? Is that my son in that car? He looked at me and he just grabbed me. I just blacked out. I don't know what happened.
Tangela is clearly devastated, but she shifts her focus to helping police solve her son's case.
Tangela told detectives that Tavish was going to be a star witness in his cousin Jay Sean's murder trial. And they believe that that may have made him a target.
This happened with Jay Sean in May. And then in July, now I'm looking for my kid. You know, so my first thought was that they had something to do with it.
Tangela explains to detectives that right before the murder, Jay Sean and Tavish were out clubbing when they got into a fight with a man named Kyrie Ross after the bar closed. Jay Sean and Tavish tried to leave the club, but Kyrie followed them and shot Jay Sean.
He was there with him, and Jay Sean got shot in the head in my vehicle.
Detectives are now wondering, did Kyrie Ross have something to do with the murder of Tavish Green?
Everything's pointing to the two cases being connected. That somehow one thing led to the other. There's just one problem with that theory. When detectives looked into Kyrie, they discovered that he was already in jail for Jay Sean's murder.
The killer in his cousin's case was already behind bars. So if someone killed Tavish because of that case, it wasn't Kyrie Ross. But that doesn't mean that the two cases aren't related.
Detectives decide to visit Kyrie in prison to see if he has any connection to the trigger man.
I think detectives were hopeful about this lead, but when they chat with Kyrie Ross, they soon realized it wasn't just so cut and dry.
Kyrie was very familiar with how the police operated, and he wasn't going to be a very easy interview. He wasn't interested in helping police, and he was going to make them work for every clue that they had to get.
Detectives are digging deeper into the murder of Tavish Green, a star witness in an upcoming murder trial who was found dead in the trunk of his car. But their prime for it. The interview ends, but police are still running down leads to see if they can link Kyrie to the murder.
Police checked known acquaintances of Kyrie, his prison logs, his financial statements, even his social media, all the things that people do when they're conducting a murder for hire. Even on the surface, Kyrie looked like a viable suspect. They couldn't find anything that leads him to the murder of Tavish.
With nothing solid to go on, detectives put Kyrie aside and refocused their investigation. Confirmed that he and Tyrika had planned to meet that night, hinting at a possible intimate encounter.
Detectives want to learn everything they can about Tyrika Woolard, so they start by questioning Tangela. She tells detectives that her son used to date Tyrika.
She wasn't no bad child. She wasn't. I can't say that. She was not one of those kids that, you know, you see bumping at the clubs all the time, always doing something, always in something. That just wasn't Tyrika. You know, that wasn't her.
Based on the text messages between Tavish and Tyrika on the night he was last seen alive, the two were still involved.
The last phone call, or the last time Tavish's phone worked, was shortly after that exchange. We were to identify her as a possible suspect, and that's where we really started digging into her.
The police looked further into Tyrika's background, tracking where she stayed at and the people that she lived with. They subpoenaed her phone records to check for any activity and questioned her friends for any leads.
She didn't have a criminal record, And from what detectives can tell, she lived a clean-cut life. She came from a good family, and nothing about her suggested that she might be involved in a murder.
But authorities learn there is more beyond the surface.
Through different interviews on the street, we found out that her phone had been disconnected, and friends and family came in and advised us she had fled the city and the state.
It's suspicious, to say the least. Why would Tyreka just leave town after Tavish had been murdered? A look at her cell phone use sheds some light on the investigation.
It was incredibly significant. Using a company called ROCIC, they actually took a city map of Panama City and the greater Big County area for that, and they put pinpoints literally every time that phone had any kind of contact, as well as times. And as investigators, that was invaluable to us. We were able to go to each of these businesses or any of the area and look for cameras that provided us pictures of the vehicle and who was in the car.
When investigators obtain camera footage from the areas where Tavish traveled that night, it reveals explosive new developments in the case.
Detectives already did their homework on her. They knew what kind of car she was driving. And when they go to these businesses and they pull the camera footage, they not only see Tavish's car in some select areas, but also Tyreka's. She was following him throughout the night.
It was incredibly important. It put a reasoning behind where she was at and what she was doing with what we knew Tavish was doing. As Tavish would go to a different house or store, she would respond, he's picking up X from here or this, that from here, and now we're gonna go here. She literally gave us a play-by-play by her text messages what was happening that night.
The text messages from Tyreka's phone clearly indicated that she was reporting his movement to someone else via text. She wasn't the only person involved in this.
Turns out, Tavish isn't the only man Tyreka is talking to on the night of his disappearance. She is also texting a 22-year-old named Daryl Mack.
Getting Tyreka's phone information was invaluable to police because it showed essentially that she was talking to two men the night that Tavish disappeared. Daryl Mack was also clearly in a sexual relationship with her, based on the text messages recovered from their phone.
It seems as if the two were trying to set Tavish up. But why target Tavish? Was there another motive at play?
Investigators wondered if jealousy was a part of it. Did Daryl know that Tyreka had a sexual relationship with Tavish? That alone could have been enough to make him feel threatened.
But detectives also had to uncover Tyreka's motivations for even being involved. And as they dug deeper, they would learn that there was another piece to this.
Police have locked in on two key suspects in the murder of Tavish Green, Tyreka Woolard and her boyfriend, Daryl Mack.
The night Tavish was last seen alive, he had been in contact with his ex-girlfriend, Tyreka. Their texts and calls throughout the evening suggested a rekindled connection. But then, suddenly, everything stopped. Detectives believe that was the moment Tavish was killed.
Tyreka wasn't just with Tavish that night. She was also in communication with her current boyfriend, Daryl Mack. She followed Tavish's every move, relaying his whereabouts in real time to Daryl, almost like it was a play-by-play.
If Tyreka and Daryl are behind the murder, detectives need more evidence to prove it. Tyreka has left town, and investigators suspect Daryl is with her.
Police are now doing a full court press on Daryl, trying to figure out who he is and if he has a record, and what is his reputation in the community. And as it turns out, Tavish's mother, Tangela, knows Daryl too.
I knew of Daryl. I stayed diagonally across the street from, they call them the 11th Street Projects. So my kids would be over there playing. I remember him, just a typical kid, just hanging out.
Detectives run Daryl's name through the system to check for any criminal history.
It turns out that he has a lengthy criminal record. He was someone who was deep in the streets.
As police start to do their homework on Daryl, they learn that he has a reputation for robbing drug dealers. In fact, his MO was using women to lure men before he would rob them.
This, of course, attracted the attention of the police because it would fit the pattern in what happened in Tavish's murder. Tyreka, an ex-girlfriend, contacts him out the blue with promises of sex. She follows him throughout the evening as he makes drops and is reporting what she saw back to Daryl. She would have known that Tavish was carrying cash from his deals. It fits the MO.
Investigators learn that word on the street is that Daryl has beef with Tavish.
Tavish had the looks, the style, and especially the attention of women. According to friends, Daryl resented that. While Daryl was also deep in the streets, he didn't have the same flash that Tavish did. Tavish had the clothes, the car, the status, and for someone like Daryl, that stung.
Police have every reason to believe that this wasn't just about a robbery. It was a love triangle that turned deadly.
The case is heating up, but detectives still don't know where Tyreka and Daryl are, and they don't have enough evidence to tie them to the murder. But that all changes when police review more surveillance footage from the night Tavish went missing.
When referring back to Tyreka's digital footprint, the night that Tavish was last seen, detectives spot something very interesting. It shows her stopping to meet someone at a convenience store, and surveillance cameras capture her doing something highly unusual.
The person Tyreka meets in the store is 22-year-old Dontavius Thomas, a friend of Daryl's.
We were able to see that he was in the store. There was a phone swap done where he took over Miss Wooler's phone at that time, and he took over a different phone.
Dontavius had used his credit card to buy something in the store after having his cell phone communication with Tyreka. It didn't take police long to figure out the identity of this person.
Detectives believe that Dontavius is somehow involved in the murder, but to what degree? Luckily for detectives, Dontavius isn't hard to find, and when they bring him into the station, he isn't holding back about what happened that night.
He was very cooperative. I don't think he initially understood what was happening fully that night, but he was cooperative. He did provide us all the information we needed.
Dontavius tells detectives that he knew Daryl was planning to rob Tavish in a home that Tyreka was living in.
He was collecting lots of money that night, and the goal was to rob him of that money. Once he went to Miss Wooler's house, that was the last time he realized it was now becoming more than a robbery. Because after they entered the residence, that's when Mr. Green was killed.
For the first time in the investigation, police have a witness to the murder.
Dontavius maintains that he had no idea that Daryl was going to do this, that it was not planned, and he wanted nothing to do with it.
Dontavius tells detectives that after the murder, he helped cover up the crime because he feared for his life.
Dontavius told police that he felt that Daryl would kill him if he didn't help. Since Dontavius was a witness, he thought he was going to go down too. So he helped put the body in the trunk of Tavish's car.
Here's where things get pretty interesting in the interview. Dontavius tells police that Tyreka helped Daryl with the cleanup. She went and got cleaning supplies, cleaned her own apartment and the car. She even told Daryl where to dump the body. So what they ended up doing was driving to the rough part of town where Tyreka's family rented a home and dumped the car. His statement made one thing clear, that Tyreka was involved every step of the way.
Dontavius tells detectives that the three parted ways, and he went home while Tyreka and Daryl drove up to Georgia to lay low. Following his confession, Dontavius is arrested and charged with accessory after the fact to homicide.
This confession was a smoking gun that police needed. They had the cell phone evidence, which was key. But now they had someone who said, I was there and I witnessed this. The only thing left to do is find Tyreka and Daryl.
Because Nontavia said that they were hiding out in Georgia, that is where detectives decided to focus their search.
But Daryl and Tyreka don't stay off the radar for long.
We put out attempt to locates for the suspects. We issued an initial warrant for Miss Woolard based off family and cellular information. We were able to identify they had fled to Covington, Georgia.
Detectives canvass the house they believe the suspects are hiding in. Then, they spot a perfect opportunity to make their move.
Traffic stop was initiated on a vehicle leaving the house, and they verified that both suspects were in the house and that he was in possession of a firearm.
Will Daryl and Tyreka come in peacefully or go down guns blazing?
There was every reason to believe that these two wouldn't surrender without a fight. They were armed and dangerous and didn't have anything to lose.
With Tyreka and Daryl on the run, detectives are stuck at a crossroads. But on August 4th, a patrolman in Covington, Georgia, gets a hot tip.
Police knew that Daryl had family in Covington, so they put surveillance on the home where they lived. They didn't know if Tyreka and Daryl were inside, but they suspected so.
During the stakeout, a car leaves the home, and officers then pull over the car. Inside was a person who was living in the home, and that person confirms to the police that Daryl and Tyreka is inside the house.
We took them without incident. They surrendered immediately.
Police take the gun that is in Daryl's possession, hoping that testing will prove it's the murder weapon.
Once we got Mr. Mack into custody and Miss Woolard into custody, they were transported from the home to the local police department.
Ran so deep, she was willing to spend the rest of her life behind bars just to protect him.
Making things more complicated for police, that the gun that was found in Daryl's possession when he was arrested doesn't forensically match the bullets that killed Tavis. So now police have a quiet witness and no murder weapon.
It's a bump in the road, but the detectives aren't done with their full court press on Tyreka and Daryl.
Daryl lawyers up, and his lawyers request a meeting with detectives to see what they have. This is a tactic known as fishing. They wanted to see how strong the case was against the client.
When detectives show the cell phone and video evidence tying Daryl and Tyreka to the scene, he folds. He turns on his girlfriend and starts talking to police about his role in the shooting.
Daryl knew, at that point, he had to cut a deal to save his own skin. So he starts talking. He's going down, and he wants to take control of the narrative.
He claims that he and Tavish were friends, that the plan was to never rob him or kill him, but that he and Tavish had some beef, and Tavish attacked him after going to Tyreka's home after the club. Daryl tries to state that this was self-defense, but the text messages, they tell a different story.
The evidence is undeniable. Detectives know it was a setup from the start.
He may have harbored some ill resentment for other things, but as Mr. Green entered the house, he was laying an ambush and didn't even attempt to rob him. There was no signs of any kind of altercation other than damage to the house corresponding to where his bullet wounds were on his body.
Detectives tell Daryl's lawyers that there will be no deal until his client tells the truth about what happened on the night of the murder.
The police knew that Daryl's story was bogus. They were not going to give him a slap on the wrist. This man was a cold-blooded killer, and they wanted to throw the book at him.
On August 4th, 2014, nearly 3 weeks after Tavish Green is murdered, Tyreka Woolard and Daryl Mack face charges of murder and conspiracy to commit armed robbery. Dontavius Thomas was also charged as an accessory to murder.
After we finished our full investigation, we come up with our totality of charges that we're going to place against all parties. Typically, in the case of a homicide, a grand jury would be called. In this case, based off of the overall charges, it immediately went to the potential of a trial.
Facing the possibility of life in prison, Tyreka starts considering a plea deal. And for the first time in the investigation, goes against her man. She offers to testify against Daryl in exchange for a shorter sentence.
I was pretty angry with the prosecutors. They didn't tell me until we were standing in the courtroom about this plea deal and her getting this less of a sentence from my child.
Under oath, Tyreka testifies that Daryl manipulated her into killing Tavish.
This entire time, Tyreka stood by Daryl, never wavering and never giving him up. She loved him, but when she realized that it was her future on the line, she made a choice. For the first time, she put herself first.
Tyreka seemed very caught up in the entire thing. She had never, ever really been in trouble in her entire life. Daryl was clearly the mastermind behind this murder, and he used his girlfriend to lure Tavish in, who trusted her. She was vulnerable, and Daryl took advantage of the situation.
But Tavish's family doesn't believe that Tyreka is so innocent.
I feel like she played both of them. I'm sure Daryl expressed how he felt to her about my son, and instead of her choosing not to mess with him or explain to my son who Daryl was, and I don't think she ever did, because I believe if she would have told him how Daryl felt about him, I don't think he ever would have messed with her. I just don't.
For admitting that he was involved in the murder, Daryl Mack accepts a reduced charge from second-degree murder to manslaughter and is sentenced to 20 years in prison.
While there was closure in this case, 20 years doesn't seem like enough time for taking the life of another. Nothing can bring Tavish back.
For her role in the killing, Tyreka Woolard pleads no contest to accessory after the fact, manslaughter with a firearm, and principal to robbery, and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. On January 23, 2023, Tyreka is released from prison.
You give her 10 years? Are you serious? What? She didn't serve all of that. And she was already on 5-year probation for something else.
In exchange for his testimony against Daryl and Tyreka, Dontavius Thomas is sentenced to 5 years probation for accessory after the fact. As for Tyreka, she stood by her man until the very end. But while incarcerated, she seemed to get her life back on track.
While in prison, she earned both her high school and college degree and started a rehabilitation program for offenders. Hopefully moving forward, Tyreka has learned to think for herself, make her own choices, and that loyalty should never come at the cost of her own future.
I think a lot of the people that were involved in this homicide were involved with greed purely in mind. And unfortunately, when that greed explodes, it can turn into this. And no matter what your limited involvement may be, you're fully involved after that point.
Tavish's life was cut short far too soon. A tragic loss that rippled through his family and community. But this wasn't the only life destroyed. One ended with a bullet, and the others with the weight of life choices.
Once love takes root, it grips hard, tying two hearts together in a connection that feels unbreakable. But when attachment turns to obsession, love becomes a trap, pulling you under before you see the danger. Then one bad choice unravels into another, until you're in too deep, consumed by a devotion that leaves nothing but damage behind.
Welcome to Always True Crime, a podcast network bringing you gripping real-life stories that you won't be able to stop thinking about. Discover your next true crime obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.
Is anyone safe behind the locked door of a London guest house? Find out on Murder Mile. Today, I'm standing on Eagle Street in Holborn, WC2. 3 streets northwest of the mysterious falling man. 2 streets east of the slaughtered spinster. 2 streets south of Jean Stafford, possibly one of Reg Christie's early victims, and 1 street west of the mad axe-wielding Baker, coming soon to Murder Mile. Situated just off High Holborn and above a pub called the Bountiful Cow, sits Beckley, a nondescript 6-story block of flats on the corner of 47 to 51 Eagle Street with a side entrance on Dane Street. Built to fit a gap on a side road full of offices, it's the kind of communal building where its neighbours only communicate with a grunt in the hallway, an awkward silence in the lift, a bang on the ceiling when the music gets too loud, and they only ever learn each other's names when a court summons comes through for stealing each other's Amazon parcels. And like so many city centre flats, one was originally rented out to tourists. Hyun Han Jin, names which mean virtuous and precious, was a 21-year-old South Korean woman who was raised with her brother, Yong-hee, by her doting parents in a village 40 miles south of the capital city of Seoul. Comprising of farmland and small industry, from an early age, Hyun Han always wanted to see the world. Even if being tiny, at 4 foot 11 inches tall and fresh-faced, she was often mistaken for a child. Just shy of the new millennium, having gained her mother's permission, which was something Hyun Han always did as a well-mannered and diligent daughter, she flew to the University of Lyon in France to study French. And knowing they would always worry about her, she kept in regular contact with her family. By the half-term of October 2001, with a few days to spare to see the sights of London, Hyun Han got approval from her mother, who said, "Wherever you go, make sure you enjoy it. Don't have any regrets." As every experience would make her daughter a better woman, only this was one she would regret. On Friday the 26th of October, she got the Eurostar from Paris to St. Pancras. Within 6 hours, Hyun Han was wheeling her rigid grey and silver suitcase onto the Piccadilly line tube. And with her case 50 centimetres wide by 29 centimetres thick and 72 centimetres high, she'd packed just enough clothes for 3 days, as she planned to be back in Lyon by Sunday. Over a brief glimpse of London, she told her friends, the city was overwhelming, and often described as a culture shock to outsiders, as it's awash with both the new and the ancient, the clean and the filthy, and every side is obsessed with its dark history of war, death, disease, torture, and executions. As a small lone girl in a big bad city, she wisely stayed within the bubble of London's South Korean community. At 7 p.m, she exited Holborn Tube, took a 7-minute, well-lit walk down High Holborn, and passing a string of Korean restaurants and shops full of familiar faces and smells. On Eagle Street, she checked into a guest house at Beckley. It was recommended by her friends, as hundreds of Korean students had stayed there before, and with Hyun Han in the spare bedroom, the landlord, 29-year-old Kai, a student from Seoul, had the other room, which he used to share with his girlfriend Mariko, who often stayed over. It was small, clean, and safe. The communal door was opened by a keypad, and the flat itself had its own key, as did her bedroom. And with Kai being friendly and helpful by showing her the sights, she had drawn up a list of places to visit and had emailed her mother to reassure her, "I have met a kind new friend." She wasn't in England long enough to have made an enemy. As far as we know, her death wouldn't be discovered for weeks, and the crime scene itself wouldn't be unearthed for months. There were no signs of any break-in, no threats against her, no stalker, no strange calls, and she hadn't spoken of any worries to her friends and family. And with no other lodgers, it was mostly just Hyun Han and Kai in the guest house. She had done everything right to ensure her safety. Or so she thought. At an unspecified hour, unwittingly, Hyun Han unlocked the bedroom door from the inside to let her killer in. Dressed in just jeans, a t-shirt, her underwear, and a pair of socks but no trainers. She wasn't ready for bed, but neither was she going out. and it was likely to be late as we know she wasn't a night owl. Neighbors heard no shouts, screams, and nothing suspicious was seen, so we can't pin to an exact time or day to her murder. And as this dot of a woman was easily overpowered, she sustained no cuts. There were no signs of her struggle, but her bruises may have been obscured by her severe decomposition. Months later, when this crime scene was finally unearthed, even after several students had stayed over and the room, as expected, was thoroughly cleaned after every use, forensic scientist Sarah Gray found a faint spatter of Hyun-han's blood by the door and a white wooden desk, staining the brown carpet, the white skirting board, and the dark blue wall. She stated, "I concluded the presence of spots of blood, which gave a strong support that she'd been bleeding freely whilst on the floor of that room, possibly deposited on different occasions, was from contact with blood-stained surfaces, like a hand. With no marks, it's likely that she bled from her nose, having been punched to render her unconscious." But it wasn't this which took her life, as her cruel killer's plan was far more dark and sinister and evil. While she was unconscious, he stripped her of all but her bra, and yet sex didn't seem to have been his motive, as her autopsy confirmed that she hadn't been raped or molested, as this was about degradation and humiliation. With a thick reel of dark blue packing tape emblazoned with a brightly coloured cartoon of two men's faces, he tightly bound her wrists and ankles so that no matter what she couldn't flee or resist. As she came to, he stuffed her socks into her mouth, not only to silence her, but having also wound the tape around her head to hold the gag in place, he stretched it over her nostrils so that she couldn't breathe. Gasping for air and pleading with terrified eyes as a faint squeak squealed from her throat. With the tape on, she would slowly suffocate. With it off, she gulped great gasps of air, and whether she lived or died would be dictated by him. Dangling the prospect of death before her, over a protracted torture, he extracted her PIN number, went to the Sainsbury's ATM by Hope and Tube, and withdrew the daily limit of her limited funds that she had. But as Jonathan Laidlaw, QC for the prosecution, stated,
"Was there a sexual motive? Was it simply about money? Or a more sinister possibility is that he achieved a sadistic form of pleasure from the slow and deliberate form of killing and sex, and money was simply incidental."
She believed she had given him what he wanted, money. But what he wanted was to humiliate and degrade this tiny helpless woman, and to watch her die, slowly and in pain. Without a fresh supply of oxygen in her bloodstream, she would have lost consciousness in 5 to 10 seconds. Her face and lips would have turned a hideous purpley blue. Oxygen deprivation would have resulted in brain damage in 2 minutes, and her death within 4. But that's only if this sadist took her to the brink of death, just once. As a small and slender woman, still bound and gagged, he folded her tiny body into a fetal position, stuffed her inside her own grey and silver suitcase, which he'd stripped of any ID or possessions, and hid it inside of the sliding wardrobe, flat on the floor, so the rubber supports left little marks on the carpet. Hiring a Peugeot 406 from Avis Car Rental, a few streets over, he pulled up outside the flat, and as if he was going on holiday, he loaded the suitcase into the boot and drove 202 miles north, up the M1, past Sheffield and Leeds, and taking the A64 nearly to York, just south of the village of Askham Richard, on an isolated, unnamed country road, surrounded by nothing but fields. He dumped the suitcase in the hedge and left. And there it sat for 2 weeks, in the shadow of the Bilborough TV mast and Stockhill cottages. But as a slew of cars and dog walkers passed, everyone just assumed, as the killer thought, it was just rubbish. One day prior, on Monday the 29th of October, Her classmates thought it odd that she hadn't returned to university. And with no contact with her friends or family, her brother Young-hee had posted appeals online for sightings of her amongst the 200-strong Korean community in London and officially reported her missing. Seeing this, her killer initially told her distraught mother that she was spotted on the 17th of November at London's Victoria Coach Station, heading to York with 3 friends. And cruelly giving her hope, he gave Hyun Han's bank card to a friend who was heading to Paris and told them to drain the account. Everything would point to Hyun Han fleeing abroad and wanting to be left alone, until her badly decomposed body was discovered. On Sunday the 18th of November, just after 4 p.m, a local heading to the pub spotted a suitcase in a hedge. And with fluid leaking out, a foul smell emanating, and with it too heavy to lift, he contacted the police. Examined in the mortuary of York Hospital, the body was in an advanced state of decay. The skin had begun to slough off and the muscles to liquefy. Bloated and infested with maggots, the blackened skin made it impossible to see any bruising, but with her wrists and ankles still bound by a colourful parcel tape wrapped from her chin to just under her red and protruding eyes, it was clear that this was a murder. Detective Chief Inspector Alan Ankers appealed for information based on the vague details that he had.
She was a woman of Asian or Oriental origin, 4 foot 11.5 inches tall, aged somewhere between 20 and 40. She was slender, with brown eyes and shoulder-length black hair. She had pierced ears but wasn't wearing any studs and wore contact lenses.
But with no tattoos, scars or ID, and with her fingerprints not on the police or immigration databases, it was highly unlikely they would ever identify her, having been dumped so far from home. Pathologist Professor Christopher Milroy stated that the way she'd been bound and asphyxiated.
I've only seen that done once, during a professional presentation in America.
So they knew it couldn't be linked to any British killer. One witness stated he saw a man on the date near to where the body was dumped, 15 metres from the suitcase and 20 metres from the junction of York Road, where a dark-coloured saloon was parked. He said he saw a man in the middle of the road.
I find it strange that someone was in the lane at that time of the morning.
He was described as
white, late 30s to early 40s, 6 foot tall, with dark brown scruffy hair and a heavy stubble, wearing a black ski-type jacket, dark jeans or trousers, and black gloves.
It was an excellent description of a Hyun Han's killer, with just one exception. He wasn't white. As for the brightly coloured parcel tape he used to bind and gag her, that was from a limited edition set of 850 rolls, produced exclusively for the Tate Gallery shops in London, Liverpool and Cornwall. It was a reproduction of a piece of art called Death, Hope, Life and Fear by conceptual artists Gilbert and George. This was something so unique, it should have snared a killer within days. But with so many months having passed, most of the transactions by cash, and the CCTV long since erased, the case was crumbling, and all the detectives knew was that she was an unknown woman from somewhere who died somehow by someone. The evidence had reached a dead end, and what they needed was a bit of luck. Superintendent Lin Byung-ho was a South Korean police officer who was studying criminal justice at Leeds University. Having read the report on the body in the suitcase, the appeal by Hyun Hang's brother, and with every South Korean required to provide their fingerprints for their social security cards, by the 2nd of January 2002, 45 days after the body was found, she was identified as Hyun Han Jin. With her name, they had her bank details, and except for an erroneous transaction in Paris, which had occurred days after the pathology confirmed that she was already dead, her phone data concluded it was switched off on Saturday the 27th of October, and it had been pinging the cell masts around Holborn. Keen to trace her movements, DCI anchors came to London with the aim of catching a killer, unaware that another body was lying motionless, bound and cold. Similar to Hyun Han, In Hye Song, a name meaning grace and longevity, was a 22-year-old South Korean woman who come to London to study hotel management at Guildhall University. As one of 2 children to a doting mother and a retired policeman, she was outgoing, popular, and described as a model daughter. But having struggled financially, she quit a course and was looking for work. Again, staying within the safety of her tight-knit community, in late November 2001, she stayed at a recommended guest house owned by a close friend on Eagle Street in Holborn. The same room where Hyun Han had been brutally murdered just 3 weeks before. But needing somewhere cheaper to stay, the landlord offered his friend a spare room at the property where his girlfriend had previously lived, a maisonette on the Lansbury estate in Poplar, East London. Hyun Han and In Hye never knew each other, and they'd never met. But they'd crossed paths in a very deadly way. Kai-Soo Kim, his first name, which bizarrely means model citizen, was a 29-year-old South Korean man who'd come to England 1 year before to study English at the Callum Language School on Oxford Street. Kai was well-liked, popular, kind and charming. And having a fairly conventional middle-class upbringing, with his father running a herbal medicine shop in Seoul. Having divorced his wife, Kai had travelled across Europe, Southeast Asia, Canada, and for the last year at least, he'd lived in London. Being smart, he'd funded himself by subletting his spare rooms, one on Eagle Street in Holborn and Augusta Street in Poplar, to South Korean students. And being cheap, clean and safe, it proved popular. Every tenant who stayed at his guest house said he was handsome, charming, very helpful, and as strangers in a city full of danger, he was the one person that they knew they could rely on. But even though he had no criminal record in the UK, Kai was not what he seemed. He professed to be generous to a fault, when in truth, he was broke, having amassed £17,000 in debt in a single year. He also gave the impression to the girls who stayed with him that he was unthreatening, with In Hye even telling her parents, "We were like a brother and sister." But all the while, his head was riddled with a deadly addiction. It wasn't drink or drugs, but porn. Hardcore porn involving bondage, sadomasochism, strangulation, pain, and the degradation and humiliation of women, and an obsession with their long and lingering deaths. By day, he was charm personified. By night, a perverted danger to women. By September 2001, barely a few months after they had got together, Mariko, his girlfriend, split with him just weeks before the killings began. She packed her bags and left the guest house in Poplar, leaving behind a half-used roll of parcel tape. Limited edition and brightly coloured, made for the Tate Gallery shops by artists Gilbert and George. It became a key part of his cruel fantasy and a crucial piece of the evidence. In Hye Song had stayed at the guest house on the Lansbury estate for little over a week. It was quiet, cheap, and the kind of 6-story block of 1960s flats where everyone minded their own business. Nobody saw her move in. Nobody knew her name. Few people knew him, and nobody saw her leave. Saturday the 8th of December 2001 would have been a typical evening for In Hye. As being short on cash, she wasn't dressed to go out. There would be no sign of a break-in, as her killer had his own key, being her landlord. She willingly let him in, as being a close friend, her bedroom door was always open. And as someone she trusted, he overpowered her with a single punch, knocking her cold and out of the blue. As before, being semi-clad, he bound her wrists and ankles with packing tape so she couldn't flee, stuffing her socks into her mouth so she couldn't cry or scream, and winding the tape around her head so tight that her eyes bulged out. With a flap over her nostrils, only he could decree if she lived or died. Living out his dark fantasy for a second time, having tortured her to obtain her PIN number, and leaving her bound and barely able to breathe as he drained her bank account at the nearest ATM. She must have had a faint hope that maybe he would let her live, having given him what he wanted: money. But as the tape cut into her flesh and a bloody froth gasped around the air holes, he watched as he subjected her to a long and lingering death. Unlike Hyun Han, as a free spirit who'd lived in London for almost 2 years, In Hee's family were used to hearing from her intermittently, and no longer being at university, she wasn't reported missing for 10 days. As before, her empty bank account and switched off phone told a story of a woman who'd fled and didn't want to be found by anyone. Kai told her friends the believable tale that she'd gone on a hotel management course, but didn't say where. And having told the same lie to her mother, he gave her the false hope that her daughter was alive and well, when in truth, he knew she was cold and dead. With the body of Hyun Han found in a suitcase 3 weeks before, knowing it wouldn't be long before the detectives found the one thing which connected them, the guest houses, Kai used her credit card as a travel agent's, and on Thursday the 13th of December 2001, at Heathrow Airport, he fled to Toronto. And there, as someone who for many years had lived off-grid and anonymously, making a living cash in hand and blending in amongst the Korean community overseas, he may never have been found. With Hyun Han's fingerprints leading to our identification, DCI anchor of North Yorkshire Police came to London, and having met with his Met Police counterpart, DCI Vic Ray, they unearthed an unnerving parallel. Hyun Han Jin, a young female South Korean student, had vanished without a trace. Her phone was off, her bank account emptied, and a trail of clues suggested she'd fled overseas, which later proved to be false when her body was found gagged, bound and suffocated. DCI Ray had just been handed a missing persons inquiry into In Hee Song, a young female South Korean student who'd vanished in a similar way. But were they connected? Escalated to the Met Police's murder command, Detective Superintendent Peter Shipp would oversee both inquiries, and together with North Yorkshire Police, on the 8th of January 2002, they established a joint investigation into the murder of Hyun Han Jin and the disappearance of In Hee Song, stating,
"We identified him early on. He was the main link between the girls, and both stayed at Eagle Street."
His phone records showed that he'd travelled to and from the village of Askham Richard, where the body was dumped, on the night that he dumped it. Tracing his bank account, a Peugeot 406 had been hired from Avis. The car's logbook matched the distance. Hyun Han's blood was found in the boot, having leaked from a suitcase, and the rubber supports on its underside matched those which had marked the boot's carpet. Establishing that he left the country just 5 days before In Hee was reported missing, both of his guest houses were searched. At the maisonette on the Lansbury estate in Poplar, her DNA and traces of her blood was found in the bedroom. And although none of her possessions remained, on a black metal shelf, the roll of Gilbert and George tape was found with Kai's fingerprints and In Hee's blood. Indisputable proof. But where was the body? He hadn't hired another car. He hadn't travelled outside of London. No one had seen him wheeling a suitcase out of the flat. And having checked the flat twice, forensics confirmed it wasn't there. In the Eagle Street flat, although an extensive clean-up had taken place and several students had lived there in the 3 months since, Hyun Hang's blood was found on the skirting board and the same rubber marks on the wardrobe's carpet where the body in the suitcase had sat, while Kai worked out where to dump it. But again, where was the other body? It had vanished without a trace. On Thursday the 17th of January 2002, for reasons only Kai knows, he flew back to London Heathrow, his passport pinged up on the police radar. They tracked him to an internet cafe on Oxford Street, and that day he was arrested. Interviewed at Western Central Police Station, he was described as cold, calculating, and even when faced with the overwhelming evidence against him, via an interpreter, the only words he spoke was no comment. They charged him with the murder of Hyun Han Jin and suspicion of the murder of In Hee Song. But without her body, in the same way he had tortured these girls for his own sexual gratification, he got a sadistic pleasure by denying In Hee's family a chance to grieve their dead daughter and to bury her with dignity. But sometimes, evidence will only emerge at its own speed. On Friday the 15th of March 2002, 3 months after her murder, with the maisonette on the Lansbury estate in Poplar sold to new owners, a builder was renovating the flat when he spotted a familiar hum. A swarm of bluebottles, one of the first insects to be attracted by the smell of decaying flesh into which it lays its eggs and its maggots feed, coming out of a wooden panel underneath the bath. Removing it, he couldn't see anything, but he saw that they were coming from a hole where a foul odour emanated. The police had already searched the flat twice, but it was as the spring temperatures caused the maggots to feast and the eggs to hatch as their winter hibernation ended, that the body could be found. Beside the front door, in a small, unused wall cavity made of bricks and breeze blocks, Kai had dumped her semi-clad and bound body, wrapping her in a duvet, covering it in her clothes, and replacing the partition wall using a masking gun. He had sealed it up so the smell wouldn't permeate, at least until spring. Before Judge Jeremy Roberts, Kai-Soo Kim was tried at the Old Bailey. On the first day, he denied all charges of murder. On the second, he confessed to killing Hyun Han, yet he claimed that In Hee's death was due to the lesser charge of manslaughter. So there we go, folks. Oh, another horrible person. Locked up, thank God. Could have done with being. It's weird, isn't it? You kind of think to yourself, well, why didn't they know? But it's one of those things where it just seems to come out of the blue, and we don't know why he committed the crimes that he did. There's got to be something in his past, hasn't there? You don't just wake up one morning and go, I think I'm gonna do a brutal, horrific murder on 2 girls and dispose of the bodies and make it look horrible. Just you'd expect sexual assault in his past, or kind of perversion, groping, that kind of thing. It just seems to come out of the blue. But then again, he'd only been in the country a year, so we don't really know much about him. Anyway, welcome to Extra Mile, the unscripted, unedited bit. I looked at the weather today because we've had rain all week and there was a gap in the clouds of about 2 hours, and I thought it's just enough to record this episode. And then I started recording, and then it started to piss down. And living inside a steel boat, it's echoing everywhere. It's really annoying. So I'm hoping I'm going to be able to edit that out as best as I can. If not, you are going to be listening to an episode which I'll be adding lots of rain to try and disguise it. It's a pain in the ass. It really is. Anyway, welcome to Extra Mile. Thank you for listening to the episode. Hope you enjoyed it, if indeed you can. Trying to think what else is going on in the world. Not a lot at the moment. I'm gearing up for my big journey around the country in the boat, where I'm going to be travelling around on the canal system, going up north, exploring places, looking forward to that. I'm setting up the boat so I've got good Wi-Fi so I can continue to do the podcast. And I just bought some solar, a nice new solar panel the other week. I'm going from 20 watts to 130 watts. Oh, Michael, wow. Except I pulled it out And I went, oh, that looks great. And then I pulled out the solar controller. I went, oh, that looks great. And then I went, okay, where's the wires? How do I connect them together? So I've had to go online, and it's just, do you know when you read things and someone goes, oh, what you need is a 6mm JP74, get an E, JP74E, not an F, make sure it's with a reversible contractor, and you just go, what are you talking about? Just tell me how to connect one thing to another. So I found a useful video online, this American guy who's very good, and he knows people are a bit thick, so he makes sure it's very simple. He doesn't use complicated stuff. And I think I've found the wires that I need. So I've ordered those. So hopefully by next week, I can have ridiculous. We haven't got any bloody sun. But I've got a new solar panel. So on the one days that we will get some sun, great. If not, I'll just stick with the old solar panel. Oh, it's all very confusing, isn't it? Anyway, apart from that, everything's good apart from here. What am I talking about? It's cold. I've had the fire on most evenings. I'm looking forward to going down the shops and getting something nice to eat in a bit. And the date, as of time of recording, is the 1st of February. I think you're going to receive this in March, by which time I will already be 50 years old. I think Eve is going to get rid of me by then. I don't even think she's going to just throw me out the window or toss me in the bin. I'm hoping that she has a good way of getting rid of me. You know, a nice way, a kind way. It won't be. She'll toss me aside. Like a pair of shoes that she's already worn once before. You know what she's like. Or like when she's drinking a yard of ale and she realises it's not our optimum temperature, so she tosses it aside. And, yeah, that's the way she treats me. Anyway, let's do some quiz questions, and then we'll dive into extra stuff that may not have made it into the episode, or maybe they did. I don't know. I think this is a slightly longer episode than normal, so we'll see. Question number 1. What was the name of the pub underneath the Eagle Street flat? Question number 2. What South Korean city were they all born in or near? Come on, that's an easy one, folks. Question number 3. What French university did Hyun Han study at? Question number 4. What London University did In Hee study at? Question number 5. What car did Kai hire? Question number 6. What hospital mortuary did What hospital mortuary was Hyun Han's body examined at? Question number 7. What job did In Hee's father do? And question number 8. In what city did Kai flee to when he escaped? This is one of those pigs of an episode, because as always happens with foreign names that Western people don't really understand, they've bastardized it really bad. So there's about 9 different spellings of each victim's name, and quite often the surname is in place of the first name, and it's really confusing. And even with Kai as well, like his first name elsewhere is Kim, and I'm just like, oh. So I've had to go on a kind of a binge of kind of looking around and working out what it's likely to be, and because they weren't registered in this country as kind of citizens, therefore they're not on any kind of official database that I can kind of look at and get a confirmation. Sometimes that happens where I can get a database and just go, oh right, electoral roll, brilliant, case closed, I know exactly what that person's name is. But in this case it's a nightmare. So I've gone for the best I can, and I think I've tried my best, but I think I've bastardized the pronunciations as well. It's made it even harder being a dyslexic as well, that I'd even written down what it was meant to be, and as I was going through recording this, I realised I'd mispronounced my own pronunciations. So I thought I'll stick with my own pronunciation, because there's nothing worse than having a name that sounds different throughout the episode. So there we go. The Eagle Street address, that was a pig. That took me ages to find that. It's in every report. It's just listed as Eagle Street. But when you go down Eagle Street, there's lots of offices, but there's loads of places in and around the early 2000s which would have been flat. So it took me a while to work out which one it was. It was actually a witness who said they heard something, not of the murder, but kind of the people who live there, and I worked out where they lived, and then I was able to trace where the building was from them. A real pig. But even with the what's it called, on the Lansbury estate, so everyone just says it's on Augusta Street in Poplar, so I worked out it was the Lansbury estate, but it's really impossible because in the Lansbury estate there's probably around 150 flats, so because it's not listed there anywhere, and it doesn't seem as if Kai owned these places. It looked like they were owned by someone else, and he was renting them, and then because they were 2-bedroomed, he would sublet the spare room, which I think is legal. I'm not too sure. I guess it depends on the person who owns it, but yeah. So, Hyun Han, okay, we've covered a lot of details about her already. 4 foot, 11.5 inches tall, so absolutely tiny. And I always find it really tragic and horrible, isn't it? The fact that you always think to yourself, what clothes am I going to die in? I kind of sometimes think those clothes. And like when I'm making dinner in the evenings and I'm kind of eating my dinner, and sometimes I choke on my food because I'm one of those pigs where I just wolf down the food. Sometimes I choke on my food, and it's not a nice thing to experience, especially when you live by yourself and there's no one there to give you a Heimlich maneuver. And Eva doesn't give a shit because she's drunk half the time, but I'm kind of there choking, and then I think to myself, oh God, do you know, when I'm making my dinner, I sometimes think to myself, is this the piece of food that's going to kill me? But in this moment, you've got this lady travelling from her university to London for a short break. That's all it is. So she's a tourist, she's on holiday, and she's wheeling behind her suitcase, which would be used to transport and then bury her body. It's a horrible, horrible thing, isn't it? Absolutely horrible. So yeah, in quite a few reports on this, they refer to Kai as being a hotelier, and owning a guest house, but it's only when you actually start digging down into it that you realise it's not really a guest house. It's kind of a flat that's sublet. But you know, it's all acceptable. It's the same. I think this is just in the era just before Airbnb started. So now, obviously, we're more used to that. The people who do use Airbnb, me personally, I don't, because a mate who's a copper, not that one, another one, said that unfortunately a lot of Airbnbs are being used as brothels now, because you can literally order it for a weekend. You say, right, 500 quid, I want this flat for a weekend. The owners bugger off. You tell all of your customers, hey, we're going to be here. You use that as a brothel. You pay off the money really fast, like within the first hour, and then the rest is all profit. And then by the time the police find out about it, you shut it down, and you're paying for it using stolen credit cards anyway, so it's untraceable. So that's why I don't use Airbnbs, because they may be very nice, but you may be staying in a place which has been a brothel many times. Yeah, he's what he does with these women, it's clearly something that he's thought about carefully, because when you look at the murders between Hyun Han and In Hee, they're both identical. So yes, he's using the same tape, but yes, it's the same method every time. So he's clearly something that he's obsessed about, clearly something that he's watched online. It's 2001, so we're not quite in an era where video streaming is great. If you remember the 2001, I remember trying to play it was a South Park fruit machine, where it was really cheap and really basic graphics, and if you were lucky, you'd get 3 cherries, and then Cartman would go, "Don't be gay," and that was, it was hilarious back then. But that's the best you could do. And I remember with the dial-up modem that you had back then, you were lucky. Like if you got an image, do you remember it'd go beep, and you'd kind of watch, and you'd get pixels and like a line of pixels every 3 or 4 seconds, and you'd have to watch it upload really painfully slow. So he's clearly not watching video streaming. This is in the era before YouTube as well, but there's clearly images that he's getting access to. There's no real dark web, but there's a variation of dark web out there, and he's becoming obsessed with that. We don't know why he has £17,000 worth of debt. He doesn't seem to be a drug addict. He doesn't seem to be drinking. Whether he's visiting prostitutes, we don't know. Whether he's getting access to high-class S&M porn, which costs a lot of money. We don't know, but this seems to be his thing. And it all kind of ties into, which is not to blame her at all. Do you know, he had his girlfriend Mariko, I believe she was called. They met that summer. I think very wisely, she kind of worked out that he professed to be a kind of good guy on the outside, but really deep down he was a piece of shit and quite weird and quite perverted in a way. So quite rightly, by the September-ish, she kind of ended it with him. That's around the same time that I think he stopped attending his English language course on the Oxford Street, and his debts had really mounted up. So quite rightly she left, and within weeks, end of October, that's when the first known murder was committed. So but there must have been something there already. She must have experienced or witnessed something, because you don't just have a normal sex life and then suddenly someone's like, I love wrapping parcel tape around people's ladies' faces and watching them suffocate and taking them to the point of death. Do you know, there's something weird going on in his life right there. So it's all very similar with each of the cases. Very similar girls, small, slender, ones that you could overpower. As mentioned, even with the description of him that the witness gave when the witness said he was 6 foot tall, got the age right, kind of said late 20s, early 30s, 6 foot tall, which he was, scruffy hair, stubbly, which he was. Witness said he was white. He's not, because he's Korean. He's kind of pale skinned, but you could understand that, especially if it was, I think they said it was late night, so it's early morning, so it wouldn't be good light anyway, so that's kind of forgivable on there. But as you can see, he's big enough that he can overpower these girls, attack them with a single blow. They don't seem to have put up much of a fight. I think that's the whole thing is, as you would see with the Blackout Ripper as well, he would go in for a punch right at the start to render them unconscious, and then he could do what he needed to do, and then he, in this case, Kai would tie them up with the tape. This was the thing that I found fascinating, is why you would pick something so unique as that tape. And I'm guessing, we don't know, I don't think he was an art person. I think his girlfriend was an art person, and she was the one who went to the gallery and went, oh, Gilbert and George, brilliant. Probably went to an exhibit of theirs, picked it up, looked at it and thought, that's fascinating, brought it home. I think he just thought it was just a nice looking tape. I think he just went, great tape, I'll use that. I don't think he really understood that it was a limited set of 850. Obviously now, if this, instead of it being a murder in 2001, if this was a murder in 2021, obviously this would have been easier to solve, because everything, like, who uses money anymore? Very few people. Most people use their cars, most people use their phone to buy things, so it would have been easier to track. And also because we're using our phones, you can track the phones as well. But back then, it was still in an era where we all still used cash. Remember that. Remember using cash. So as we can see with this, there's a kind of a dichotomy between his motives. He's clearly taking money out of their accounts because he's got a lot of debt and he needs the money, and he's torturing them to get the money. But as the kind of the prosecution lawyer said, it didn't seem as if that was his motive. It seemed as if that was like a bonus on top of it, but really what the thing he wanted was to be able to torture them and use this moment to get his sexual thrill by having full power over them, to pop the tape over their nose so they can't breathe, and then release it and do that. And even though they were, I think both of them were semi-clad with the exception of their bra, there was no rape and no molestation involved. So it's clearly a fantasy of something that he's watched, and he's trying to recreate that moment to get himself excited. As you know, he probably looked at all these images quite a lot and got to the point where it couldn't arouse him enough, and therefore, as the kind of weirdo that he is, he needed to recreate this originally in order to get himself off. And at that point, he doesn't see these women as real people anymore. They are just an object for him to get what he wants, which is horrible. What else have we got? Oh yeah, trying to find the location for where he dumped Hyun Han's body. That was a pig, because everyone just says Askham Richard, which is the name of a place. So I did my usual thing. I always like to know things. I don't like not knowing. I think there's nothing worse than just like someone says, oh, the murder happened on a street. I'm just like, well, that's just lazy. Get off your fat ass and then do some like I said to Paul at True Crime Enthusiast, we both are of the same agreement that if you can find the number, find the number. So like we're always searching through like old photos and comparing it with Google Maps and going, okay, that window's there and then you've got a drain pipe there. So, you know, that's what we do. With this one, I followed his route. I knew that it was a lane off the A64. I could see where Askham Richard was, and I just started taking all the lanes and working out. And then I found one photo of the police on the ground searching a road, and in the background, I could see a white cottage and then something next to it that I couldn't work out what it was. So I just went on Google Maps, and for about half an hour, I was just walking down the street in reverse, looking and looking and looking until finally I found the exact spot. And it was right next to Stockhill Cottages. And the Bilborough TV mast. Unfortunately, the road itself has no name, so it's between the A64 and the York Road leading to Askham Richard. But that road itself, annoyingly, doesn't have a name, which makes it seem like I haven't done my research, but I have. It's just it doesn't have a name. Really annoying. But yeah, if you go on Patreon, I'll put up all the images on there, and I'll show you I'll do one of my. On Patreon, I do my location videos. So they used to be on social media, and they're not anymore. They're Patreon exclusive only. And what I do is I show you all the locations and all the little running around. So I'll show you this one so you can have a look at exactly. It is remote. There's nothing there. There's like one cottage. There's the little gullies on the side of the drainage ditches on the side of the road, and then fields either side, and that is it. So, but it doesn't make sense. Why travel 202 miles all the way up to York? And we don't think he knew this. We think he was just travelling and trying to find somewhere remote. And maybe he'd been to York before, but I doubt he'd ever been to Askham Richard, because I've never heard of Askham Richard, and I've been alive for 50 years. So why would you travel that far and then go, okay, I'll stop here and I'll just dump it in a hedge next to the road? Why wouldn't you go somewhere where there's woods? Why wouldn't you go somewhere like get a spade and then bury it somewhere? Why wouldn't you hide it somewhere where it can never be found? Why travel that far and then just dump it next to the road in a hedge, where eventually someone, whether a person or whether a council worker, will come along and go, oh, it's rubbish, I should really get rid of that. It just doesn't make any sense. It's almost as if he wants to be caught, but there's no reason for him to want to be caught. It doesn't make sense, because he's already set up the idea that she is overseas and that she's emptied her bank account. And he even managed to get someone, a friend, to go to Paris and drain the bank account. Now, that person was interviewed. They're not guilty of anything at all because they were unaware of what they were doing. He had said to them, oh, if you're going away, because like he likes to profess to be a nice person, he was like, oh yeah, here's some money in this, please use that. And they probably would have seen that it was a friend's card, but it could be nice and easy that he was just like, they owe me the deposit on this, so please go overseas, enjoy yourself, not realizing that they were being used as an alibi. It's one of those things, isn't it? I thought about this when I was writing this. If you did murder someone and you wanted to get away with their murder and make it look like they were still alive, you wouldn't go spending their card. If I had their cards, I would go into a disreputable pub, which is full of like deadbeats and people like Eva vomiting everywhere, and leave one of the credit cards like on a chair or something and just walk out, because no one's going to hand it in, but someone will go, oh brilliant, great card, and they will go on a spending spree and they will get caught on all the cameras. Case closed. They will be, people will be chasing them, but they won't be chasing you. Not that I plan to murder someone, but there we go. As you can see, he's a nasty, manipulative man. So because he's a nice man and because it's a small Korean community in London, obviously all of the girl's friends were there and saying, where is she? And he was like, and he would go, oh yeah, both of them came to stay with me, they left at this time. Hyun-Han went, he said to some of her friends that she went to Germany. To her mum, and also the police, because when she was listed as a missing person, obviously the police turned up and went to him and said, where is she now? And he would just go, oh, on this date she left, she only stayed for a couple of days. And he showed them the Eagle Street flat, and obviously they walked in, had a look around. It was clean. Of course it was. None of her stuff was there. And he was able to go, I haven't seen her since. But he was able to say to her mother, I saw her on the 17th of November at Victoria Coach Station. He would have said that after the 17th, obviously, and on the 18th the body was found. So that kind of is him backtracking slightly. Body was found 18th. He saw her on a coach heading there on the 17th. But obviously that wouldn't make any sense at all, because she would have been dead, when was that? End of October. So she would have been dead 3 weeks by that point. So that wouldn't have made any sense at all. But there we go. That's what people do. Let's see. Discovery of the suitcase. That's all pretty standard. I've kind of put everything in there. Pretty much 2 weeks. 2 weeks the body was there. No one really acknowledged it, but then again, who does? Do you know, I saw something at the side of the road the other day, and I thought to myself, will I go and look at it? And I thought, no, I can't be asked. Because A, it's going to be crap. B, if it's not crap, if it's a horrible dead body in there, I really don't want to find that. Do you know, I know some people will go, oh, I'd love that, but you wouldn't, because it would scar you for life. Like, we've all seen things in our lives which is just horrific, and there's points where you see things or you remember things, and it's just when you blink. Like I remember ages ago, there was someone's neighbour's cat was kept crawling over my roof, which was fine because we'd buddied up together. And then I was listening to music and I heard a sound. I didn't think much more of it, and it was winter. And then there was another sound. I couldn't work out what it was. And then when I came out through the side of the boat, I saw that the cat was in the water, and it had probably been in there for a while, but it was still alive and barely clinging on. So I reached out to try and grab it, and just as it was holding on by one nail on one of my side fenders. And as I went to grab for it, the nail kind of gave way and it just went under, and I watched it go. There's nothing I could do. Icy cold water, and it was gone. And it's horrible. I still think about that today. Ugh. Yeah, so the tape. We've covered the tape. So yeah, it's a piece of work. You can have a look at it now. It's called Death, Hope, Life and Fear by Gilbert and George. Gilbert and George are those kind of famous artists who you would have seen. They're very much, they see themselves as a living sculpture. So all of their work of art, and I think they were 60s, 70s artists was when they started. So I got hiccups. They see themselves as the work of art. So all of their work of art contains them, normally kind of full bodies, but in this case it was their heads and kind of cartoon versions. So a famous piece of art. It was used as a template for a parcel tape. I'm sure they were thrilled with that. Limited edition parcel tape, just 850 rolls, made exclusively for the Tate Modern Shops. What was that? London, Liverpool and Cornwall. But of course, sold over the period of a year. I think it was a year to a year and a half. But back in the days when everything was done by cash, pretty much. So it would have been hard to really track down. Also, we're thinking of an era as well when you don't really have tills which monitor everything. Now we have tills that tell you exactly, you know, it's because it all leads to stock control, doesn't it? So if you buy something, it says, okay, this is sold, but it also tells the warehouse, okay, we're down one on this, so next time, this is the point where you need to reorder this. That wouldn't have happened in 2002. Unlikely, especially in Tate Modern Gallery Shop, where, you know, you're not really selling that much. No offence to them, I'm sure they sell a lot of stuff. As we can see, really, really good that sometimes it is luck, a lot of luck in this, a lot of hard work, but a lot of luck at the same time, and especially having Superintendent Lin Byung-ho, 38-year-old South Korean policeman who was studying criminal justice at Leeds University and happened to see the report from Hyun-hang's brother and read the report about the body in the suitcase, and he was piecing things together, and he was just like, there we go. I'm sure he didn't say, and of course, look, one of these useful things, South Korea, if you your social security cards, which everyone has to have your fingerprints submitted. I know people grumble about identity cards, and it's kind of the bugbear thing that all governments have to put up with, but has its uses. Unless you're a criminal, of course, then I'm sure people wouldn't want that. In Hee Song, 22 years old, studying hotel management, we don't know a hell of a lot about her. This is the problem. I kept diving in to try and work out more about these ladies so we could do a backstory, but it was almost impossible. They didn't seem to know each other. They had the same group of friends, but the only time they crossed over, they didn't actually cross over. They both stayed at the Eagle Street address, but not at the same time. It was about 3 or 4 weeks. I think it was 3 and a bit weeks apart. Let me just check. I think that's all I'm going to say about that. I think. Let me just check. Going through the details. It's interesting that he killed Hyun Hang, the first girl. Oh, my brain's gone. I've gone really tired now. He killed the first girl, and then he decided to dispose of the body up north, as we mentioned before. But with the second one, he decided to bury it inside the flat, which is weird because it's his flat. But it also makes me wonder whether, because it had been reported that the body was found up in Yorkshire, whether that was the reason why he decided not to do the same thing again. Because he didn't. He decided to use a cavity wall space and then flee. I think he fled 5 days later, so not long after. So that would have given him time to kind of find the space, make it, pack all of his stuff up, and then disappear. That is the weird thing, though, isn't it? We don't know why he came back to the UK. It was suspected that he thought that potentially the body could be found, of which it was. By the 17th of January, I think, when he came back, it hadn't been found, and it was still 2 months away from being discovered. So I think, my laptop's going to run out of power soon. This is the curse of recording a podcast on a boat. Sometimes power doesn't last. He came back. Police suspected the reason he came back was he was going to move the body. It had been there about a month, so it would have been pretty rife. But then again, it was winter with the heating off. That's why the pathologist forensics couldn't actually find it the first time around, because it was well hidden. He'd sealed it up to try and make sure that no flies would get in, but flies will get into anywhere. They really will. And with bricks, you've always got bricks that have got a bit of hole between the mortar. Flies has already got in. Maybe flies were already kind of, when he opened it up, flies already worked their way in there, as they do, following the smell of the body. Maybe there was already flies on the body by that point. He just didn't see it. And then he sealed it up, and he used kind of like a mastic to cover the holes to make sure the smell didn't come out. But of course, by the time that spring happens, things heat up, and the blowflies, as they are, blue bottles, start to work their way through. It is said that they can detect a corpse within minutes or hours using their acute sense of smell. They are attracted by the decaying flesh, in which they lay hundreds of eggs, which hatch into maggots. So that's the point. It was at the stage of, what's it called? I'd written it somewhere. The stage of what? I'll find out one. I'll find out afterwards. So my brain has just gone really tired. I've run out of steam now. So I think that's it. I think that's all I want to say. So he's up for parole next year. Would he get parole? It's unlikely. I hope not. As mentioned, they thought that he may have committed other murders overseas. The police over here think it's unlikely that he did more here. He did 2 within a short space of time, but he's only been in the country for a year, and they had to search around and they couldn't find any other murders that were similar. But you never know. But then again, he'd lived in other countries overseas for at least a decade, so there are other investigations at play to see whether he's committed other murders as well. It wasn't announced whether he had or hadn't. We don't know. Oh, I forgot to say at the start, thank you to new patron subscriber. Well, not new patron subscriber, old patron subscriber. But thank you to Martin Ward. Sorry, Martin. I was rambling away and I forgot to say. So thank you for continuing to be a patron subscriber. It's much appreciated. Let's do the quiz questions. Let's see how many of them you got. Oh, don't forget, end of this month, so by the time you get this, we've still got the True Crime Fest that's going on. It's 55 quid for a day's entertainment, loads of great content providers, and instead of coming along and seeing us stand around a table looking like a bunch of tits, we're all putting on shows. So I'm going to be doing one of my live walks. I'm going to show you all the murders in and around Shireland Road. Me and Paul are going to be doing Weird Pam, which we've done twice privately, and we've enjoyed it. So we're going to do one special one for audiences, and everyone's doing something different as well. So come along. There'll be a link in the show notes. Here's the quiz questions. Let's see how many of them you got. What was the name of the pub underneath the Eagle Street flat? It was the Bountiful Cow. Question number 2. What South Korean city were they all born in or near? Seoul. Question number 3. What French university did Hyun Han study at? It was University of Lyon. Question number 4. What London University did Ian Hye study at? That was Guildhall. Question number 5. What car did Kai hire? Peugeot 405. Question number 6. What hospital mortuary was Hyun Han's body examined? That was York Hospital. Question number 7. What job did In Hye's father do? He was a retired policeman. And what city, number 8, what city did Kai flee to? It was Toronto or Toronto. So there we go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that, if indeed you can enjoy an episode about something so horrific. Thank you for listening to the show. It's much appreciated. The rain has stopped. That's really annoying. Have yourself a good week. Stay safe and be good. Lots of love. Bye.
Want more true crime? This podcast and loads more are part of the Always True Crime Network. It's packed with box sets to binge and twisted tales you won't find anywhere else. Find your next podcast obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.